my recent publication, Imagery of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering, Visualizing Tokuga Cultural Network. And okay. Why it doesn't work? Okay, so this one. Okay, so this is the cover page of the my book. But however, somehow Brill's it came from the Leiden Brill, but Brill's distributing company just went bankrupt, and somehow it's still not available. But it will come out very soon. But anyways, it's kind of somehow it's such a challenge to condense 20 years of research into 45 minutes talk. So I might kind of skip around and you might lose the context. So I like to have a kind of Q&A session after the talk. But anyways, it's so much to do with US, UH Mānoa CJS, and I'm so honored to have a chance. I really appreciate CJS is giving me another chance to deliver this talk because okay, so 3 stages of evolution sounds like a Pokemon, but anyways, it started from my MA thesis was already 2 visions of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering, and somehow kindly CJS that time I think led by the Dr. Minichero gave me the Edward Saiten Sticker Award in 2002, and also okay after that I went on as Dr. Hatsuma introduced about my background. I went to Vancouver with UBC to complete my PhD, but dissertation was written on this island already. So when I finished my coursework in Vancouver, I came back to Hawaii, and also again, so that was the time of the Dr. Huey, right? I kind of had a with Dr. Satsuma, always there. I delivered the my doctoral dissertations, kind of talk, right? That time, and then now kind of final stage of the final stage of evolution of the my Orchid Pavilion Gathering project. And now, like I really appreciate Professor Mark Levin, his undership, like CJS again, like with Dr. Satsuma, of course, giving me another opportunity to discuss about this work. But anyways. Okay, so what is the Orchid Pavilion Gathering to begin with, right? So just in case somebody who kind of hears this term, I like to kind of briefly explain about what is the Orchid Pavilion Gathering, which was actually based on Chinese historical or legendary anecdote and episode. Wanshi Tzu is very famous calligraphy sage, right? Sage calligrapher. Okay, sorry, sage calligrapher. He invited 41 prominent scholars of his day, mostly his family members, and also because he's coming from such an aristocratic background, many of them are his family members, but also his friends and colleagues, and but they were all scholars. So they didn't want to have just a party, right? By the way, so this party was about the purification ritual, right? So according to the Chinese Taoist tradition, the energy of yin energy in the spring turns into yang energy in the spring into the warmer season. They somehow have to purify the bad energy. So that's why they perform the purification ritual and followed by the drinking party. But again, because they were scholars, they didn't want to just have a kind of simple drinking party. So they made an artificial meandering water and they floated the sake cup. And before sake cup passing, their front of them, they had to compose nice poem, otherwise 2 poems. And then otherwise they had to drink the, somehow, basically drinking game. Right, so they performed poetry composing drinking game, and but somehow this okay. So at the time of the party, Wanshi Tzu somehow under influence of alcohol, he somehow improvised this poem kind of prose, right, poetic prose to commemorate that event, right? So he's explaining about the, okay, so this happened in the 353 in the solar calendar, fourth century. But what kind of explanation of how the party was, right? Old and young gathered together, and although there's no musical instrument, the atmosphere of the party was very nice, and somehow okay, so this is okay. So the part, kind of ending part, right? When the people of the future investigate us, it is the equivalent of our looking back at the people from the past. Somehow, okay, it's very much kind of, he's talking to us almost like, and he said, I have no choice but to pay attention to my contemporaries and record their words. The world will change and the events will differ, but perhaps future generations will achieve pleasure in the same way we do. And reading this prose, they will experience some sense of identification. When I read this, I felt like a thunder light hit me. And somehow I wanted to record, my, contemporary, and somehow continue talking about, him and the other people, in the past. But anyways, so this preface, this is actually became the preface of the all the poems composed that time by the 41 guests, and himself 42 people, right? And this is called preface of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering, and became the such a treasure. Not only the not only the contents, but also calligraphic somehow excellence is also deemed and considered as the best calligraphy in the entire world. And but anyways, okay, so somehow this anecdote of the Orchid Pavilion came into Japan, Nara period, right? It says like a 7th century, but 8th century Nara period, and it was very much like nativized through the waka poetry. I will discuss a little bit more about the that part later. But although information, knowledge of Orchid Pavilion was there since 8th century, somehow there was no pictorial representation of it until Edo period. But anyways, there are so many pictorial representation of Orchid Pavilion Gathering. But anyways, okay, so since I have to condense this talk, 20 years research into 45 minutes, I have to somehow focus on the some certain point, which is community, and also permeability of the classes. And okay, so somehow many, and actually, Professor Shostak knows about this, right? So many studies in Japan is somehow pigeon holding, artists, right? And people talk about the specialists of Kano school, or people who talk only about the literati school, and somehow have a lot of problem, because of that. And okay, so also all the understanding was, Tokugawa period, Tokugawa society was such a kind of static and organized, into the 4 different classes, samurai and the farmer and the artisan and the merchants. But when we look at the paintings and sharing the painting things, somehow that's also, it's all misaligned, and that's somehow scholars started to talk about that, right, already 5-10 years even, but it's all misaligned, and there were a lot of communications, and so anyways, permeability of the class, transcending kind of information, among all those schools, right, and also represented by all different classes, right? But anyways, when we focus on the painting theme rather than particular school, somehow we can kind of get to see what is going on. But anyways, okay, but why Edo period, right? So they had a knowledge already in the Nara period, but somehow this painting theme became so important during the Tokugawa period, Edo period. Okay, so first of all, Tokugawa shogunate lineage kind of aspiration for Japanese culture by promoting the Neo-Confucianism as their kind of primary ideology, right? So because they wanted to really somehow produce the concrete political framework. So Neo-Confucianism focusing on hierarchy of the things worked, seemed to work for them. And also, although the Tokugawa shogunate didn't have an official relationship with Qin dynasty China, they always kind of aspired Ming dynasty. When China was run by Chinese kind of Chinese proper, and all back then priests were very much invited to Tokugawa kind of Japan, and they brought first-handed really important Chinese cultural aspects, and also including the Orchid Pavilion imageries and imagery. And also another importance, I kind of spoke a little bit about this today in tea ceremony class, the history of tea ceremony class, but anyways, development of garden picture, teienga, somehow due to the alternative residency policy, enforced in the beginning of the Tokugawa shogunate. In order to reduce the economical power of daimyo, Tokugawa shogunate somehow enforced half of the year, they had to, daimyos had to stay in Edo, and only half of the year they had to they can go back to their back home. So, but daimyos can live in the shabby house. So they had to build a nice house, But okay, some of the poor daimyos, they were in financial trouble, but the rich ones, somehow wealthy daimyos, they competed with making the beautiful gardens, and they are living side by side in Edo, right? So because of that, kind of like a garden culture and the garden picture, teienga was really kind of developed, and some of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering paintings are taking its place in the garden. So garden becomes very important, and also because Orchid Pavilion Gathering happened in the particular place, existing particular place, which is located in Guiji Hill in the Zhejiang province. Somehow that linked to the somehow that was associated with this new idea, Shinkei's true view tradition came from China, but very much appreciated in Japan, and merged with pre-existing Yamato tradition of Meisho-e, and somehow it kind of received the new interest to depicting the scenery of this particular place where the Orchid Pavilion Gathering happened. And also we must not forget about the three treasures: poetry, merging of poetry, calligraphy, and the paintings. So because of this renewed aspiration for Chinese culture, Chinese poetry, kanshi circles are very active. And also because of that, also like a new poetry, poems were receiving so much attention, and the haikai, like before haiku, right? Haikai culture was really, circles are really developed elsewhere. And also, revival of Wanshichi's calligraphic style. This was the old style, once became imperial standard in Nara court. But Edo period, once again, this was used as a model calligraphy. And also, many calligraphy in the painting gathering happened, in the all over Japan. And most of the, this shogakai, calligraphy painting gatherings, they often, somehow had a party, drinking party, and somehow under influence of alcohol, they improvise the paintings and the picture, poetry and the stuff like that, very much like Wanshichi did, like, and also, many of those gatherings were patronized by sake brewers, because this was the time, Edo period, first time before Edo period, only unfiltered sake was available, and it was expensive. But they kind of came up with technology to produce filtered sake that which they can mass produce. So that's why many sake brewers became, somebody like Kimura Kenkado became very astronomically rich and supporting the, those kind of like, parties. So that's why, many reasons, actually those are the kind of, some of the many other reasons became very important in Edo period. But anyways, okay, first, turning the Chinese representation, okay, such as this, actually this, engraved image, was based, it says based on Li Gonlin, very famous literary scholar and painter in China, produced, model of this, image. Actually, this is a long, okay, I showed you earlier, right? But that was supposed to be modeled after the Li Gonlin's pictorial representation. And since this is engraved and the impression of it came into Japan, and it gave such a great, impact on Japanese versions. By the way, in China, not as many as Japan, they produce pictorial representation because Chinese culture is such a literary culture, scholars culture. So calligraphy, readings and writings and the contents are more important than making it like illustrating it. But somehow Japanese culture is somehow kind of like entertainment quality is somehow more important than China, probably more pictorial representation produced in Japan. But Kano Sansetsu's work is one of the earliest work. Somehow we can tell adapted from Chinese representation. But here, okay, I'm not gonna go into the, so much details of it, but I just like to kind of show you the many kind of potteries somehow depicted in this painting. We can kind of identify the real-time production of that time. But this is actually very unusual for especially Kano paintings. Kano painters always look at the other painting to paint, right? So they don't look at some, okay, kind of time you had, somehow, sketches and stuff like that, but that's exception. Usually, Kano painters are famous to look at the other painting to paint their own, but somehow so many representation of the works, we can't think other than Sansetsu somehow sketching and observing the work itself, right? Many of them, right? And okay, so somehow there is some tea ceremony scenes also, right? So anyway, it was very important, I guess, as a tea ceremony was very important in the 17th century, right? So this was a time of the probably enshu, and but anyways, Sansetsu is really incorporating the images of such, right? So why is it, right? When we think about it, something to do with his networking in the community he was belonging to, because this work, particular Orchid Pavilion Gathering was located in the Zuishin in temple, and from the very early, like in the beginning of the production, and somehow we can't tell exactly who commissioned it, but probably they were receiving the Kujo Yukie. Kujo family was one of the 5 most important Fujiwara family, and somehow, okay, this Kano school in Kyoto, they were descendants of disciples, not painters, extremely talented, but they have a very difficult time because they don't have they are not connected by blood, with Kano founders. So when their political opponents, of course, meaning Tokugawa shogunate, right? Because they were working for Toyotomi side, so they are almost executed. But then traditionally, Shokato Shoujo, famous calligrapher, in the temple, like a person helped them, but he didn't have enough political power. So, but reality, right? So nowadays, scholars are really finding out who was real supporter, Fujiwara Yukie. So he could do it. He had enough power to save those like painters. But anyways, so who was he? So other than coming from such a power place, his wife was a daughter of actually Toyotomi Hidekatsu and Oeo. And Lady Oeo married to Shogun, second Shogun Hidetada, right? Tokugawa Hidetada. So somehow, and also, okay, they were able to kind of, use this connection. Yukie, Kujo Yukie convinced Hidetada not to kill them, right? So somehow, they, in their level of political situation, they were able to do that. And also, okay, so Yukie's brother was abbot of the Zushin in temple. And also, his son also inherited this position. So this, okay, the pavilion gathering painting, I would say must have been somehow patronized by Yukie. And then we can tell those collections could be somehow collected by Yukie and somehow be in commission to paint what, so it's kind of cataloging the important collection, right? So kind of having the multiple meaning and also showing the whom he somehow associated with his kind of social environment by looking at the painting. And okay, but anyways, so this painting is done by the Kano Eino, like a third generation of Kyoto Kano tradition, son of the Kano Sansets. But anyways, okay, because of the Eino's effort, I think a lot to do with the Eino's effort. Kano family in Kyoto survived until the Meiji era, although they are not connected by blood with Kano family. But anyways, what makes Eino very important is he is also producing not only the very colorful style, but also he is somehow producing the, okay, so this kind of like ink painting, but many of the iconography included in his ink sumie version of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering shares the iconographic representation with later development of literati movement. So it's already Kano school and literati school supposed to be counterculture, right? So they say, okay, basically, okay, so so this is very early development of the literati version, literati adaptation of Orchid Pavilion Gathering. And here some of the images like playing the music or soaking the legs in the water, those are somehow actually coming from the Kano Eino's version. And okay, so how literati version of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering developed, because okay, so Gion Nankai is a scholar. He represented in the present-day Wakayama Prefecture, key region. He was a samurai, somehow lower middle ranking samurai. But anyways, he wrote, in his treatise, art treatise, that he didn't like this kind of Orchid Pavilion Gathering, right? Because this gave the inspiration for the Kano school, right? So his reason disliking this work was more of the political. So Gion Nankai, by the way, because of his mischievous act or whatever, we don't know the real reason. He was exiled once, but he was brought back to the position. So he must have had some kind of grudge against, like shogunate daimyo system. So he wanted to create counterculture. So that's why, okay, so this type of representation doesn't have a omomuki, interesting taste, and the vulgar. So somehow, if I was this and that, but he didn't leave the example of Orchid Pavilion, but Ike no Taiga had association with Gion Nankai, and he painted Nankai's dream come true. So, okay, but also we are always talking about the China, Japan, but without Korean inspirations, it's not complete. Somehow, Ike no Taiga and also other of his mentor Yanagisa King, okay, Gion Nankai too. They were recruited to host Korean tsushinshi, Korean official missions, right? So because Hideyoshi messed up relationship with Korea during his time, so when Tokugawa shogunate was established, they did for the first thing they did, diplomatic mission was normalizing the relationship with Korea, because they are not, dealing with China, Manchu China, directly. So most of the they were allowing Chinese merchants to come to Japan, but they were somehow depending on the kingdoms of Ryukyu, present Okinawa, and Korea, bringing the information to Japan. So they normalized the relationship, and many kind of surge of information, from Korea came to Japan, and Japanese literary paintings. You can tell this kind of zigzag things like earlier works. It says, okay, depending. I mean, looking at the coets, kind of carved rivers and stuff like that. That's true too. But not only that, somehow this zigzag, composition, very much coming from Korean paintings, Korean versions of the Orchid Pavilion. So it's again, we can see what kind of social environment, Tiger and other literary painters were situated. And interestingly, he probably chose this painting theme because the time of his when Tiger painted the okay, by the way, this is draft of this Emma, right, dedicated to Gion Shrine, present today Yasaka Shrine, right? And back of it, there is a donors' names, 23 donors' names, including women, Raku, right? And they somehow wanted to dedicate this kind of like votive panel, and Tiger probably chose this theme because it wasn't known that time yet. But anyways, okay, so because this was located in the Emado, like a semi-outside for almost over centuries, it's already kind of damaged. But luckily, we can get to see the iconographic representation by printed media, right? So this was published during the Edo period, 1819. Okay, so Minwa and Kitagawa Harunari, they went around all the temples and the shrines to record somehow images of the votive panels, so we can get to see the what are there. But this is second page, right? Something very enigmatic, right? Okay, it's clearly written in the preface of Orchid Pavilion Gathering. Although there was no music from string or wind instruments, right, drinking of blah, 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 right? But somehow, almost always, Taiga includes the iconography of such, right, music players, right? And earlier, actually, the discussion was inaugurated by late James Cahill sensei. Now somehow they must have made a mistake, or kind of like but somehow in the somehow another important actually discussion by Kobayashi Yoko-san, right? Kashima kind of reports, writings. She was talking about the Yosabu-san's version. But anyways, what is going on? Why clearly saying no instrument, but almost on purpose, right? So it was on purpose. It wasn't mistake. It wasn't mistake. Actually, this is actually adapted from the many iconography was adapted from the elegant gathering at the Western Garden, another important painting theme, based on the Seido anecdotes, of China. But anyways, also, okay, Shirin Shikken, 7 Sages of Bamboo Grove also includes the music players, right? So basically, what Taiga is trying to do is emulating, somehow important classical representation of other, important people's, scholars gathering. They wanted to elevate their own status. Basically, they were he is painting the image of Chinese gathering, but mostly more like a primary reason is they wanted to produce the image of themselves. It's almost like a self group portrait of their own community, but somehow performing the role of Chinese scholars in order to elevate their status. And also very interestingly, Taiga himself was kind of genkan player and oftentimes, like he tuned with his wife. Gyokuran. Gyokuran was another literati, very active literati artist and music player. Also, there are many writings, recording their interaction. So their own community, including himself and his wife, and that is somehow kind of taking the, replacing the place of the Chinese scholars. So that's kind of many kind of overlapping somehow qualities, right? And okay, of course, our time, like started from the, okay, sensei, somehow our times also, kind of think about the, this issue. Of course, actually, we found the written materials, what Edo scholars thought of it, his, their contemporary, right? So Shibano Ritsan wrote this actually in the colophon of one of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering painting. So according to that colophon, right, he knew, right? So there are no musicians who are playing, but this is not supposed to be, right, in the Rigonlin's representation. So what is going on? But he says Taiga's interpretation of this theme is extraordinary and innovative. So he's somehow admiring what Taiga is doing. So they were aware, right? So this is not this is not according to the Chinese representation. But anyways, even okay, moreover, Taiga composed kanshi, Chinese poetry, and it says okay, so translation of it is one the third day of the Yonhei era assembled all the sages. How many of the peach blossoms floating there were recorded in their poems, right? So this is he's talking about the primordial Orchid Pavilion incident. But then he talks about Shukuya's red and blue and Dainen's inscription thereon. These superb works of two gentlemen are even better than those of that year. So it's very self-conscious, but they're talking about themselves, right? So by the way, Shukuya is, one of his best disciples who inherited Taiga, studio, and Taiga didn't have children. So Dainen is actually Shukuya's cousin and a very famous, Tenkokuka, like, carving the shield. And they were friends, and they took the very famous trip to Mount Fuji and Tateyama, and kind of, they are close friends. So he is basically admiring his own friends. In turn, he is kind of talking about very self-consciously their own community, right? And then, okay, so I like to kind of, talk a little bit, different trend, but also kind of merge into the, literary tradition, which is Mariam Okyo's, illusionistic, visual representation. So Okyo was about 10 years younger than Taiga, junior than Taiga, but somehow he came up, okay, so this, Fusumae, kind of dim, so it's kind of difficult to see it, but this is in the private collection. But if this was, located in the temple or, house, kind of, Fusuma, this is in the, too bad it's in the storage. But anyways, it kind of placed this way, right? So then all the, figures were located in the angle of eye, right? So meaning, okay, he is creating the kind of like, 3D dimension, kind of trying to make viewer feels like one of the actual participant of this gathering. By the way, Taiga and Taiga's followers, literary tradition, they are trying to create idealistic mindscape. So that they're not meant to kind of make a viewer believe that he or she is part of the picture, but in the way Okyo did was eradicating the boundary between the this like a line of the Fusuma and yourself, right, the viewer, and somehow make you feel. But this kind of tradition came from his training, right, to produce the megane, right, and he used this was very popular toy, actually, this is Harunobu's representation, but they used the lens and looking at the image like this, right, and of course a lot of information came from Dutch somehow traders, and they brought, rangaku kind of, Dutch studies, and it was very, much kind of part of the atmosphere of August time, Enlightenment movement, and a lot of encyclopedia was produced. People didn't want to know only the idealistic kind of world, but they wanted to know the real things, right? So desire to know the real things somehow made them publish the, a lot of encyclopedias. So, but at the same time, okay, Okyo received the big patronage by Abbot. Abbot usual of Emman in Temple, in actually this is Midera in Shiga, prefecture Otsu. And okay, so this Abbot usual is imperial family member, right? So big. So okay, by the way, why was he? Okay, I also forgot why Okyo was working at this kind of toy shop to produce this kind of picture, right? Because his family was very poor farmer. He comes from poor farmer in the Kameoka region in the outskirts of Kyoto. So young age, right? Somehow we call it kuchiberashi, right? Somehow reduce the number of mouths to eat. So that's why he was sent to this shop. But he did very well, and he is getting the support of imperial family and also Mitsui family, astronomically rich Martian family, right? So that's why many works produced by Okyo is up to today collected by the Mitsui family, Mitsui Memorial Museum. But anyways, okay. So here is an interesting part, right? So they don't stick to the one style, right? No pigeon holding, right? Somehow Maruyama Oshin, okay, so Maruyama, Ozui is a Okyo-san, and but Ozui didn't have a good hair. So Ozui's brother's son, so still makes the Okyo's grandson. Maruyama Oshin inherited third generation head of Maruyama school, Maruyama family. But interestingly, he kind of, he is retaining some quality of Okyo, but incorporating literati style, right? So because all the painters are there and spending time together, influencing each other, now somehow they don't kind of and also this is I couldn't kind of leave this out. This is okay. So Nishimura Nante is one of the 10 best students, Okyo Juttetsu, one of the 10 important disciples of Okyo. But anyways, his style is also, he did design of it, right? And also combining the Okyo's style and literati, representation, idealistic kind of like space. But this was woven into tapestry and somehow, okay, so present day, this is located in the storage, but because it's very too important, but used to be, decorating the Tsukihoko of the Gion festival and roaming around the, all over Kyoto. But the meaning, okay, what we can tell is this theme of Orchid Pavilion is not kept by the exclusive elite society. Everybody, every corner of the Kyoto kind of small shop people, they all knew it and appreciated it and enjoyed it, right? And okay, at the same time, okay, what happened after the death of Taiga? Right after the death of Taiga, although his position, his studio was inherited by Aoki Shukuya, and there are some important literary painters like Nakabayashi Chikuto, continue staying in Kyoto, and but still, okay, Kyoto was pushed by the Maruyama Okyo's disciples because he was such a big figure, and his 10 disciples and also Shijo school, right? And from there, stemming out from there, Hara school, Kishi school, many other schools, somehow after the Okyo, somehow kind of taking over the Kyoto painting kind of world. And then what happened to literati, right? So somehow, okay, in Osaka was somehow directly connected with Kyushu that time because Hankyu, this Hankyu is not that present today, Hankyu Railway. Hankyu no Han is Osaka no Han, and Kyushu, Hankyu no Kyu is Kyushu no Kyu. So Hankyu Koro, like So all the important Chinese materials, landing in Kyushu, right, Dejima, Nagasaki, directly, boom, moved to the Osaka, and Osaka was a hub. And from there, all kind of materials are somehow distributed all over Japan. But it was a hub. So first arrival of China, somehow culture was there. So Osaka became kind of almost a hyper Sinophile, communities, place. And okay, so many intellectual activities, and also, because it was a port and a hub, many kind of cooperative, companies were kind of there, and somehow they had enough. Those merchants, they are not, mom and pop, store owners, right? It's a large corporation like, and they established Kaitokudo Academy, which was a private university. Because other than that, almost all universities were founded by, public by either shogunate or daimyo. But this academy was purely founded by those merchants, in Osaka themselves. And because of this nature of a Hankyu kind of relationship, they had a lot of material, Chinese material to study it. And the Konton Shisha, Chinese style poetry kanji circle was very active. And every 25th of every month, they had a meeting. And including Ike Taiga somehow, took the, salary kind of like a Sarimon boat and commuted, back and forth. So somehow, okay, meaning Okada Beisanjin is, in the way, in real sense, literati in the kind of similar to the sense of Chinese, literati culture, because in Japan, almost all the literati painters are commercial painters. They take the commission and produce the painting and sell and make money, right? But Okada Beisanjin was, somehow, his real, position is a very, astronomically rich, actually rice merchant. So he doesn't take a commission. So that's what we can tell, okay, how kind of like very interesting painting representation. This is not commissioned by people. He kind of enjoys painting himself. And he has quite a few, interesting paintings. But and then, okay, so I'm kind of, okay, it's already, okay, did I run out of the time? 5 more minutes. Okay, I will wrap it up because nativized version is also very important, right? Okay, 5 more minutes, right? Okay. Anyways, okay, the Pavilion Gathering theme somehow stimulated, this, another genre, nativized genre, called, Kyokusui-en, gathering of meandering water, and it came from actually, I thought, Tsukioka Sette is also located in Osaka. Right, so somehow he had a somehow communication with all the Osaka scholars, right? So he knew kind of like old cultures, right? Classical cultures. So that's why he kind of okay. So this is part of the annual event of 12 months, which is coming from the Heian period kind of classical representation. So this is okay. So this is here, right? So part of it. So but anyways, okay. Okay. Anyways, I just kind of wanted to show you. We're not gonna go over, but this is the way Orchid Pavilion episode was nativized, right, in the Nara and the Heian period through the waka poetry, and okay, interestingly, in the beginning, many peach flowers, somehow because third day of third month is peach. Kind of associated with peach, right? But somehow, while being nativized in the waka poetry, somehow many of them referring to the flower. Just flower doesn't say peach, meaning cherry blossom in Japan. So somehow they are replacing it. Somehow during the time of the nativization. Somehow, and also okay. So this is very interesting. Tsukioka Sette started to paint. He was probably the first, I thought he was the first one to paint female figure, female poet in this representation, right? And but somehow okay, so I wrote it and I published in the 2019 book, but anyways, and then 2009 book, but anyways, then I realized when I was invited to kind of participate in this, Sunrise Sunset, exhibit in 2013, when, we have a kakekae, like, when works, change, we open all the, showcase, and then, we are able to kind of, closely look at the work, right? And then, boom, I found the earlier, 170 years earlier representation of nativized orchid, kind of like, Mandarin, water, later, called Kokusui, in the illustrated biography of Prince Shotoku. And but anyway, so then this is kind of almost 170 years, right, goes back. But it makes sense because this is painted by Kano Sanraku, and Kano AK is his great grandson, and Takada Keiho is a disciple of AK, and Tsukioka Sette studied under Takada Keiho. So through his sensei, there's a great chance. By the way, what's interesting thing is, okay, 1C2 is replaced by Empress Suiko, who Prince Shotoku worked for, right? And somehow, okay, so this kind of thing, okay, so I'm not going to talk about the Sakai Hoitsu, although he's super interesting figure, like a son of the Himeji Castle. But then, okay, so, really kind of Tsukioku Sette is a kind of like a point of kind of like a, converting the Kano style of the painting into the ukiyo-e style, right? So he doesn't do the printed version, but he does many kind of nikuhitsu, like a painted ukiyo-e. But then somehow, that became such an inspiration to produce many printed versions of the ukiyo-e adaptation of the Orchid Pavilion Gathering. And when they did it, actually, too bad I don't have time for Sakai Hoitsu. Sakai Hoitsu was such a like high-ranking daimyo's son, right? Coming from, Lord of Himeji Castle. And he was second son. So he doesn't need to inherit his castle. He gave to his brother, and what he did was developed his artistic like painting, and also he got involved in the haikai community, producing the poems, and supposed to be he was very, rich and famous, and also, handsome and talented, very popular in the keisei, like a pleasure quarters, yukak. He was always going to, yukak. And then, okay, so somehow, okay, so this, annual event of imperial court was emulated, adapted into the annual event of pleasure quarters. In the pleasure quarters, they had a kind of like a very strict annual events. Somehow those are based on imperial events, of the Heian court. And but anyways, okay, so okay, the pavilion or Kyokusui-en, it's not we don't. Okay, but always, okay, the pavilion is always, somehow mentioned here. This is part of the poem of, not the poem, prose of the preface, of okay, the pavilion here, right? And it becomes the kigo, right? The haiku, we need the kigo. So somehow, this event was, of the March, not March, third month of lunar calendar, is somehow, becomes, many of them are Kyokusui-en, right? So, okay, so this was a time also, right? Matsuo Basho revival, right? And, haikai community was very, active. So, they, okay, at the end, somehow this is my conclusion, they even produce the, Sujimono and replacing the Matsuo Basho's, image at 1C2, right? So somehow, so once like, Sanraku did it, replacing with Empress Suiko, but now, Matsuo Basho is, taking the position of the 1C2. So it's really, they are talking about their own community, group portrait, but, using the, this anecdote to elevate their own kind of like, social status. Okay, thank you so much. Okay.